Hello, and welcome to Nice and Blunt. It's time to rank some wide receivers, and these are going to be my top 40 half PPR wide receiver rankings for week 9. Coming in at number 1, I think he's earned it at this point. It's Cooper Kupp, who has not only been performing like a number 1 wide receiver, has the best matchup this week among the top 5. Tennessee is one of the worst defense against the pass, and Cooper Kupp is the number 1 option for Matthew Stafford. He is going to light it up on Sunday night. At number 2, I got Davante Adams at Kansas City, and even though Aaron Rodgers is not going to be available for this game, I think Davante Adams is going to come back from the COVID list with the vengeance. And when you look at his stats without Aaron Rodgers in his career, those games with Brett Hundley, for instance, he did not really take a big dip in fantasy production. He was the wide receiver 4 that year on a per-game basis, and I think Davante Adams will be just fine. This week, he's my wide receiver 2. At number 3, I have Tyreek Hill versus Green Bay in the same game, and I feel like the Chiefs' offense is just a little bit predictable, and opposing teams have been able to limit Tyreek Hill just a little bit more, and that's why I got slightly lower expectations for Tyreek Hill than I do Davante Adams, but they're both obviously must-starts in this game. At number 4, I have Deebo Samuel versus Arizona, and really the only red flag is this matchup in this game. Deebo Samuel has been lights out, one of the best wide receivers in fantasy. So I really love Deebo Samuel the rest of the season. I would lock him in as a top 5 wide receiver the rest of the way. At number 5 this week, I have Marquise Brown, who I love the matchup for. Coming off a bye, I think Marquise Brown is a very safe bet to score a touchdown and has been exploding for some monster games with Lamar Jackson throwing him the ball. So I think we can bury the narrative that Lamar can't throw the ball, and Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews are the main benefactors. So you better start Marquise Brown this week. At number 6, I got Stephon Diggs at Jacksonville, and I kind of wanted to rank him higher. However, he just hasn't really been performing lights out this year, and even though this is a good matchup, he's definitely a top 10 play. I don't feel confident enough in his target volume to rank him any higher than 6. At number 7, I got Jamar Chase, and I think he's a pretty solid bet to score a touchdown. He's been playing like a top 10 wide receiver, and I'm going to rank him that way moving forward. At number 8, a very safe bet to score a touchdown, but kind of a tough matchup in this game. He's going up against Jalen Ramsey, but it is a primetime game, and there's no Derrick Henry. So you know that they're going to feature A.J. Brown as much as possible, even though some of those targets against Jalen Ramsey may be difficult to convert. I still trust A.J. Brown as a top 10 play. I also trust Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, 2 sophomore wide receivers who are the number 1 targets on their team. And I think Justin Jefferson will have a bounce back game, and CeeDee Lamb will play well no matter what, even though this is a kind of a difficult matchup against Denver's very good secondary. It looks almost guaranteed that Dak Prescott suits up for this game, so I trust both of them as lock-it-in plays in Week 9. At number 11, I got Deontay Johnson versus Chicago, and this is a good matchup, but at the end of the day, I think the upside is just a little bit capped because Ben Roethlisberger doesn't take too many deep shots down the field throughout the game, and that's why it's unlikely that Deontay Johnson goes over 100 yards. And then at number 12, I have DJ Moore versus New England, who is kind of matchup proof in many ways, but he's more of a floor play because he is unlikely to score touchdowns, especially at this point in the year when we have very little confidence in Sam Darnold. But the main reason why he's this high is because there's a lot of players on bye who I can't rank ahead of him. Antonio Brown is unavailable, same goes for Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and DK Metcalf is also a very reliable play too. So that is the main reason why DJ Moore is this high in the rankings at number 12, but I still trust him no matter what. I'd also lock in Amari Cooper into my lineup. He's a must start, especially with Dak coming back. You can trust the workload for Amari Cooper. At number 14, I got Mike Williams, and I'm a little bit worried about this matchup, but obviously with the players on bye, he boosts up the rankings. He didn't score last week, but he has 6 touchdowns on the year so far, and I think Mike Williams is the safest bet in fantasy for the Chargers wide receivers. But the Philadelphia secondary is legit, so it's not going to be the easiest of matchups. I also like Brandon Cooks at wide receiver 15 going up against Miami, who does have a good matchup. And same goes for Robert Woods versus Tennessee, who I think is also going to light it up on Sunday night. I really like these 2 wide receivers sandwiched between the Chargers wide receivers with Keenan Allen at number 17. Also with a difficult matchup against Philly, but you still trust both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen to get a decent amount of targets and produce consistent numbers on a week-to-week basis. At number 18, I got Michael Pittman, who I think is establishing himself as a top 20 wide receiver. And on paper, this isn't really the best matchup against the Jets because they just give up so many yards on the ground. But I think that you can trust the connection with Michael Pittman. Ideally, you saw the video I posted earlier today that says I would definitely start Michael Pittman in this matchup against the Jets. At number 19, I have Adam Thielen at Baltimore, who has been a pretty reliable play for touchdowns, but I think you can still trust him a decent amount this week, mainly because of all those options on bye, like I mentioned. Also, Terry McLaurin, and it looks like Sterling Shepard is out. But with all of those factors, I think you can trust Adam Thielen as a top 20 play. He has a good connection with Kirk Cousins. I would also still find it so difficult to bench DeAndre Hopkins, even though he's kind of questionable for this game, even though he's only missed 2 in his career. That hamstring is definitely something to be concerned about. And as long as he suits up, I think I would still play him. I just can't really justify benching DeAndre Hopkins, but this is not a game where I expect a ceiling, a boom game for DeAndre Hopkins. So right behind DeAndre Hopkins is his teammate. Coming in at number 21, it's Christian Kirk against San Francisco. And if DeAndre Hopkins doesn't play, obviously Kirk moves up the board. He would definitely be inside my top 15 quite comfortably. I think he would be a lock-it-in, must-start wide receiver. But regardless, I love his upside this week because A.J. Green has already been declared out. So the wide receiver 2 is definitely going to be Christian Kirk in this game. And I think he is a must-start flex option in pretty much every type of format. I really like Christian Kirk in Week 9. At number 22, I trust Devontae Parker as well, who has a very good matchup against Houston. He is the most reliable bet to score a touchdown, and he is getting a very consistent workload in the passing game every year that he's been healthy and available this season. So that's what I expect once again, and Devontae Parker is my preferred Dolphins wide receiver, my number 22 this week. At number 23, I have Jerry Jeudy, who's going up against Dallas. And even though I think it's a safe bet that the Broncos lose this game, especially after trading away Von Miller, I think that this game script bodes well for Teddy Bridgewater to get some meaningless stats in the second half and throw the ball a lot and get some confidence into Jerry Jeudy, who had kind of a down game last week. I had him as a must start and it didn't really pan out. But the Denver Broncos offense as a whole just really wasn't looking good last week. So I think they're going to get it a little bit back together. And Jerry Jeudy is a very safe play, in my opinion. I trust him as my wide receiver 23 in Week 9. At number 24, I got Chase Claypool versus Chicago. And I'm kind of just banking on the upside of this matchup. It looks like a good spot for Chase Claypool. And again, I mentioned with Deontay Johnson, the upside is kind of capped with Ben Roethlisberger. I don't really love the upside too much, but I think it's a very safe floor on a weekly basis. And Chase Claypool is a very reliable flex play this week. Tyler Lockett is on bye. Calvin Ridley looks to be out once again for this game, and Corey Davis is doubtful at the moment, but by the time you watch this video, I really don't think that he suits up. Everything points to him being out for Week 9. So that's why Hunter Renfrow comes up to number 25. Obviously, we know the tragedy with Henry Ruggs, and that opens up some targets for Hunter Renfrow. So he is a very safe flex play, and I think that there's some added upside that normally isn't there this week. I may be a little too low on Hunter Renfrow, but I am a little concerned that most of those targets that were going to Ruggs just go to Darren Waller and Bryan Edwards. So I'd rather see what the Raiders look like this week before I fully commit to Hunter Renfrow as a top 20 wide receiver. But I think this week he is a very safe flex option. The matchup doesn't scare you at all. At number 26, I get Emmanuel Sanders, and right behind him I have Cole Beasley. I think Sanders has slightly higher touchdown upside, and that's the only tiebreaker between the two. I think both are very safe flex option plays, and in a PPR format, I would definitely prefer Cole Beasley in a full PPR format, that is. The reason why I have Sanders above him is that I just really don't think that after a bagel last week, he's going to be held in check the entire game. I think they're going to try and get him involved early and often and take some deep throws in the direction of Emmanuel Sanders. So that's kind of just my gut feeling. I really don't think he's going to be limited so much in back-to-back games, and I think he'll have a decent bounce-back game. But I like both of them as flex starts this week. At number 28, I also trust Cortland Sutton in a good matchup. I just think that they want to get Jerry Jeudy reacclimated and back to feeling good. So that's why I prefer Jeudy in this matchup, but Cortland Sutton has a pretty high floor. He's just not the safest bet to score a touchdown. I think that is more likely to go to Jerry Jeudy. At number 29, I have T. Higgins versus Cleveland, and there's tremendous upside, especially in a full PPR format for T. Higgins. I would rank him in the realm of Devontae Parker and Christian Kirk if it was a full PPR league, because there's just so much potential for T. Higgins to move the chains and eat the clock by keeping it in bounds in this game. I think T. Higgins is set up for success. I think both him and Jamar Chase need to be in your lineup, but I get it. T. Higgins has been a little bit disappointing, but he's been getting a high workload. He just hasn't been catching all of those passes. So I trust T. Higgins, but in a non-full PPR format, he is a bit touchdown dependent. That's why he's only my wide receiver 29 this week. At number 30, I have Jamison Crowder at Indianapolis, and I think you can trust the floor because Corey Davis is a player I'm expecting not to play once again. So not only will Jamison Crowder see about 8+ targets in this game, I think the odds are really high that he scores a touchdown because Indianapolis has given up 13 touchdowns to wide receivers through their first 8 games this season. So I like those odds for Jamison Crowder. And Jarvis Landry is definitely going to get a few more looks now that Odell Beckham Jr. is basically not going to play for the Cleveland Browns. He didn't get traded, he didn't get cut, but he's not going to suit up. So I think they're just keeping him away from all of their competition. They don't want him on another roster to beat them in the playoffs, and that's why Odell Beckham Jr. is not a factor. But I think Jarvis Landry is the main benefactor, and I think you can light him up in the flex as a pretty safe bet to score about 8 or 9 points. Jalen Waddle is who I have at number 32, who has a good matchup, but I just prefer Devontae Parker. And I also think Mike Gesicki is a more reliable option as well in this passing game. Jalen Waddle sometimes blows up, and this may be a ranking that doesn't pay off. It might be too low. But there's also some games where Jalen Waddle just drops a lot of passes, and that's why I don't fully trust him yet, and I don't think that the ceiling is quite there for Jalen Waddle. I don't really trust Kadarius Toney either. This is starting to get pretty risky territory, but he is the number 1 wide receiver for the Giants. However, he's going to get the toughest cornerback matchup, and I don't really love the upside for Kadarius Toney this week. There was also that fluky situation with his thumb where he went out of the game last week and came back. So there's just so much injury risk in New York. The vibes don't feel too well, and that's why I think any Giants wide receiver carries a lot of risk this year. At number 34, I've bumped up Bryan Edwards, who I think is going to fill most of the void without Henry Ruggs. And we'll reevaluate after this game, but I think Bryan Edwards may be a very interesting high upside acquisition if you have gotten him off the waiver wire or can get him right now. Check to see if he's available because he's definitely moving up the board for the rest of season rankings. I think you can see him very similarly to Tyler Boyd at the moment. There is some upside, but sometimes he may be a little bit forgotten as the third option in the passing game, and that's why he does carry some risk. But at this point, you are kind of on the edge here of considering these players, and if they're actually vying for your lineup or not. Van Jefferson is a high upside flex option as well, but he's just kind of too risky for me outside my top 35 because you know that Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are the go-to options. So even though Van Jefferson is definitely the number 3, the only thing that really makes me consider him this week is this matchup. So Tennessee obviously is bad against the pass, but Van Jefferson's workload isn't really the most trustworthy of anyone. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant to start him, but I understand if you're desperate, he's not a bad option. Same goes for Rondale Moore, who the main reason why he's this high is because AJ Green has been ruled out, and we don't fully know if DeAndre Hopkins is 100% healthy for this game. So either way, I think Rondale Moore is going to be a little bit more featured than usual, and I think the floor is a little bit higher than normal. So that's why I normally have him closer to 50, but this week he's my number 37 wide receiver. If Hopkins doesn't play, then I would see Rondale Moore a lot more like Jalen Waddle, and he would definitely be moving up this board a little bit, but still not a top 30 play even if Hopkins sits. At number 38, Rashard Higgins is interesting. We've seen him have success in this offense with Baker Mayfield, especially when Odell has not been on the field. So he is worth a look, possibly worth an add for your bench, but still pretty risky. I don't feel too comfortable in any of the players here. You're just chasing upside at this point. At number 39, Sammy Watkins comes in versus Minnesota. And I think he's going to get a similar workload to before he was injured, but Rashad Bateman is now in the mix. So it's possible Sammy Watkins is more risky than this. And I wouldn't like to rely on him. But the matchup is pretty good. Minnesota's secondary doesn't scare you. And then Jacoby Myers is getting the most targets for the Patriots, and they are putting up a decent amount of points lately. He still hasn't scored on the season, but he is the safest floor play among all of the Patriots wide receivers, but just barely. All right, that wraps up these top 40 wide receiver rankings for half PPR formats. And if you have a start-sit question, maybe you're in a different type of scoring format, leave me a comment down below and I'll try and get to it as quickly as possible. Tomorrow, I'm going to upload my must-start plays at the running back and wide receiver positions. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out on that video, be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell to have those videos come to you. My name is Adam Riancho, and thank you for watching Nice and Blunt.